York remains on high alert following a deadly Halloween terror attack. With China set to spend billions more on a new Silk Road trade route, critics are demanding more resources to alleviate poverty. And a fashion event in Cameroon celebrates plus-size women. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidui. You are in for Vincent Makori, who will join us shortly from Nairobi. This is Africa 54. We begin here in the United States, where police in New York City remain on high alert a day after a man drove a rented truck onto a busy bike path in New York City, killing at least 8 people and injuring more than a dozen others. The attacker also rammed his truck into a school bus, injuring 4 people, including 2 children.
News reports quote police as saying the suspect is 29-year-old immigrant from Uzbekistan named Sayfullo Saipov. Police shot him after he got out of the truck brandishing 2 fake guns. While he recovered in hospital, police worked throughout the night, collecting evidence from the rented truck he used in the attack. They also surrounded a vehicle believed to belong to the suspect in the parking lot of Home Depot improvement store in Passaic, New Jersey. Investigators also searched a mosque in nearby Paterson, New Jersey, which they believe he attended.
He lived here for 3 months, and obviously, I've asked a lot of people here. No one knows him, no one recognizes his face, and I believe it's just this is a personal situation. This is a personal fact that he did that, which is I feel so bad because, again, Islam has never teach us to kill people.
Back in New York City, the traditional Halloween parade went ahead under tight security, but with no known dangerous incidents. Officials initially said there's no evidence to suggest the attack was part of a wider plot, but there'll be more police on the streets.
You'll see them in the airport, you'll see them in the tunnels. It's not because there's any evidence of any ongoing threat or any additional threat. It is just out of vigilance and out of caution.
Not long after the attack, President Trump tweeted, quote, "We must not allow ISIS to return or enter our country after defeating them in the Middle East and elsewhere. Enough," end quote. Trump then tweeted, quote, "I have just ordered Homeland Security to step up our already extreme vetting program. Being politically correct is fine, but not for this," end quote. Law enforcement sources say the suspect has been in the U.S. since 2010. Investigators are now likely tracking his whereabouts before and after he arrived in the country. Heidi Adams-Fitzpatrick, VOA News, Washington.
Kenya's electoral board, the IEBC, says it has proof that nearly 99% of voters who participated in the October 26 repeat poll were electronically identified. The board says voters were identified using the Kenya Integrated Management System. The data shows electronic fingerprint proof of more than 7.5 million voters. More than 37,000 votes were rejected. On Monday, Commission's chairman, Wafula Chebukati, declared incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta the winner of the repeat poll. Opposition leader Raila Odinga, who withdrew from the race early last month, dismissed the repeat election as a sham. Odinga also announced he will establish a People's Assembly consisting of all parts of society, which would take part in the management of state affairs until a legitimate presidency is restored. Rights groups in Kenya blame the police for the deaths of more than 35 people during protests, especially in opposition strongholds. Now, joining us via Skype from Nairobi is Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori. Vincent, good evening. Are there any major political developments today in Nairobi?
Well, at this moment, we are getting hints that the main opposition, NASA, might be announcing the beginning of demonstrations next week. But they've said before they give the specific date when those demonstrations will begin, and along with boycotts of certain businesses and services that are associated with government and government officials of the Jubilee government, they plan to conduct a training program, and this training program will be mostly targeting those who will be like captains of these demonstrations, because they have all intentions, as they say, to not disrupt the normal business of the day, or to not lead to any form of violence. And so they say they have formed a council. This council will be responsible for proper training of those who will lead these demonstrations. Another significant thing is that there have been reactions, actually, from election observers, and particularly the local election observer. ELOG today said that it also agrees that there are problems with the elections that just happened, and that there is need to completely re-evaluate the system and make sure that in the future the same mistakes are not repeated. But they have also called for dialogue between the two sides, so that all Kenyans can start feeling that whatever government that is going to come out of this is a representative government.
Now, Vincent, since these developments took place, do we know if there are any plans to swear in Mr. Kenyatta anytime soon?
Well, they are waiting, because there's a kind of a 2-week period within which anybody who is aggrieved should present their case to the Supreme Court in case they feel that they can challenge it successfully. They will give that period. Before then, there won't be any arrangement, because then you can never really guarantee that he will be president until the period that is provided by the Constitution, by which people have to present any case to the Supreme Court, has expired. So at the moment, it's a wait and see. Actually, I was in touch with someone within the office of the vice president. They told me they're just waiting until that time expires, which should be about 2 weeks from now. If there's nobody who's challenging this election, then they'll proceed to make arrangements for the inauguration of President Kenyatta.
Otherwise, no protests today?
No protests today, but we have to mention that the independent legal unit, which you just mentioned, has actually reiterated that 36 people were killed by the police. And they're saying most of these people are actually shot at close range, and a number of them were not even involved in any protest. So they're asking the government to do something about it.
Vincent, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you.
Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Moving to Eritrea, where at least 28 people have reportedly been killed in rare protests in the capital of Asmara. The U.S. Embassy in that country reported gunfire late Tuesday at several locations in the city and advised U.S. citizens to avoid the downtown area. The opposition group, the Red Sea Afar Democratic Organization, says more than 100 people were injured in the protests, which they say began on Monday and escalated on Tuesday. The Eritrean government is downplaying reports of unrest, calling it hardly breaking news. The Eritrean government has long faced criticism by human rights activists over its harsh military conscription laws. Liberia's Supreme Court has stayed next week's presidential election until it considers a challenge to the first round results by a losing candidate who has alleged fraud. Charles Brumskin's Liberty Party finished third in the October 10th vote, set up a runoff between former soccer star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai. The runoff vote was scheduled for November 7th. Earlier this week, Boakai's ruling Unity Party announced it was backing the legal challenge. It accused President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, one of its own members, of interfering in last month's vote by holding private meetings with election magistrates. The court has instructed the Liberty Party and the National Elections Commission to file briefs by Thursday of this week. Now, the succession debate is heating up in South Africa. The ruling African National Congress is holding hundreds of meetings as grassroots members nominate candidates to take over from President Jacob Zuma as party chief in December. The front-runners are Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and the former chair of the African Union, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. But with several other ANC figures running, the contest is too close to call. The deeply divided and sometimes violent branch meetings start the final stretch of the race to succeed President Zuma, whose rule has been marred by corruption allegations and a sharp economic slowdown. It seems unreal in this 21st century, but an astonishing number of people are bought and sold around the world. The U.S. Department of State estimates between 600,000 and 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders each year. Millions more are enslaved within national borders. A grassroots effort to raise the awareness of the crime of human trafficking is taking place in the Washington area. VOA's June So has more on the arts-based campaign called Arts Work for Freedom.
24 photographic images and words stop passers-by at Washington's DuPont Circle. Each image and quote from men, women, and children who are trafficked as sexual and labor slaves challenges viewers to imagine the daily horrors and desperation of the victims.
Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. It's very moving, and it's disgusting, and it's very real. But I'm definitely glad I stopped, and I hope that I'll take more of this with me than when I came, so that I can make a difference, even if it's just by abstaining from a practice or a clothing line or something that might actually hurt someone else.
I feel something now, so I'm aware. I was aware of the problem before, but it kind of hits home when you see it so visually, like this exhibition. Obviously, some of these traffic victims are exploited to make product cheap.
Award-winning photographer Kay Chernush created the collage and constructed images from her photos of trafficked persons.
I was first introduced to the issue of human trafficking through an assignment I had for the State Department. This was back in 2005. I was sent to Hong Kong, Macau, Thailand, India, and Italy to photograph all different kinds of human trafficking at that time.
Gripped by these human rights violations, Chernush continued to work in different countries, partnering with anti-trafficking NGOs. The first bought and sold outdoor exhibit was held in The Hague in 2009, then traveled to other cities in the Netherlands.
That was the genesis of Artworks for Freedom. If photography could be that powerful, not only in moving audience perceptions, but also empowering survivors, why not bring in other artists besides photography?
Other artists joined the anti-trafficking campaign, using their own mediums, including dance, to depict the journey of trafficking victims from trauma to healing and recovery.
I think it makes a bigger impact through empathy. That's what I'm trying to do with my dance piece, is to create an empathetic environment of the individual stories. And I think through that, that's going to touch people even more than just reading dry facts.
The exhibits have been shown in major cities in many parts of the world. The Washington campaign also presents art from migrant workers' children and quilts made by trafficking survivors. 12 golden doors, transformed from battered wooden doors, are a metaphor for reclaiming the victims' lives.
Our goal with Artworks for Freedom is really to create awareness of human trafficking. This is something that we can eradicate in our lifetimes, and everybody has a role to play. Everyone can do something.
For producer June So, I'm Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
Now, climate change and pollution are damaging the health of millions of people every year. That's according to a report by the World Health Organization and the World Bank. The report also shines a spotlight on the increasing impact of water scarcity. It warns that the future is troubling for countries like Jordan. VOA's Kevin Enox reports.
To many Jordanian farmers, the nation's water crisis is already here. I have 28 hectares. I used to plant 16 hectares with citrus fruits and 12 hectares with bananas. Now I plant 6 hectares with bananas because of the water shortage. Before we used to have enough water, but now we don't have enough water to grow bananas because of lack of rainfall and of water shortage.
This is the Yarmouk River. Once an important water source for the Middle Eastern kingdom, these days it is a trickle of water.
Believe me, the decision makers, on top of them, the Minister of Water and Irrigation, I don't believe that they sleep well every day because of the scarcity of water and thinking about water supply for all the sectors.
And a new report suggests it's going to get worse.
The climate change shown that we are in trouble in the future where all the resources will be less, around 30%, and without climate change we are in trouble. On top of this crisis will be the climate change in addition to the refugees fluxes which make the life very difficult for Jordan to manage the water sector.
Government officials say the only real solution to their water troubles is desalination technology. But Jordan is almost completely landlocked.
And desalination, as you know, it's far away from the central part of Jordan, around 350 kilometers, which needs a huge amount or investment to desalinate the water and to transfer the water to the governorate needed this type of water.
In addition to getting more water, taking better care of the water they have is a necessity. The government estimates as much as half of Jordan's water supply is wasted.
There is a room to use water better. We need to support the government in its effort to improve the irrigation network, improve the household utilization of water, improve the use of water in agriculture in terms we need to produce more from the drops of water in agriculture.
For now, the government says it is cracking down on illegal water use, increasing water prices, and will start diverting more wastewater for agriculture. Kevin Enix, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Coming up, China's new Silk Road mega infrastructure project stars controversy. Stay with us.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Now, the World Bank has released its Doing Business in 2018 report. The report ranks economies according to their ease of doing business. With more details on how African countries rank in Africa is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Jill, good afternoon.
Hi there. So New Zealand, Singapore, and Denmark came in first, second, and third spots respectively, followed by the Republic of Korea, Hong Kong, China, United States, UK, Norway, Georgia, and Sweden. Now, Mauritius was in 25th place. It's the highest ranked economy in sub-Saharan Africa. In Africa, it revealed the following, that Nigeria, Malawi, and Zambia were among this year's top 10 improvers based on reforms undertaken. For the first time, the group of top 10 improvers includes economies of all income levels and sizes, with half being top improvers for the first time: El Salvador, India, Malawi, Nigeria, and Thailand. Now, to no one's surprise, Mauritius ranked well because of the ease of doing business rankings, particularly with construction and banking, as we have reported on.
So I'm curious, outside of Mauritius, how are the other countries in the continent faring?
Other economies in the region that perform well on the ease of doing business rankings are Rwanda, Kenya, Botswana, and South Africa. The lowest ranked economies are Somalia, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. The good news is a record number of 83 reforms making it easier to do business were implemented in 36 of 48 economies in sub-Saharan Africa in the past year. This is the largest number of reforms ever recorded by the Doing Business report in any region and represents 31% of all reforms implemented globally in the past year.
So is there any positive data represented in this report?
Rwanda has implemented the most reforms in the past 15 years, totaling 52, followed by Kenya and Mauritius. I found this particularly encouraging. The average number of days to start a business in the region has dropped to 22.5 days from 61 days in 2003. And I think that this is largely due to the increasing transparency on the continent. The more transparency with banking and corruption are two of the biggest catalysts for driving more institutional investment to Africa.
Joe, thank you very much for your reporting. Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Now, during China's recent Communist Party Congress, a twice-in-a-decade meeting of the nation's one-party government, President Xi Jinping said the country would be a contributor to global development. Key to that is the so-called One Belt, One Road initiative, which seeks to rekindle the ancient Silk Road trade routes linking China with Europe and Africa. Henry Ridgwell has our report.
Running 1,300 kilometers over the world's highest mountain pass, the so-called Friendship or Karakoram Highway is evidence of China's willingness to spend big. Costing tens of billions of dollars, the road links Western China with Pakistan, part of Beijing's One Belt, One Road initiative, a central tenet of President Xi's leadership.
The government is committed to do whatever it can to make sure that it is successful. So a lot more money and resources will be put into it to support that.
But figures show since the Karakoram Highway was built, Pakistani exports to China have actually fallen, while imports have increased, raising concern China's new Silk Road could become a one-way street.
At the moment, there's a lot of focus on infrastructure, and particularly transport, pipelines, that sort of thing, which don't directly address poverty. And in fact, there's been, in some cases, some controversy about the social and environmental impacts. But I think the aim should be to address development, including poverty and related issues.
Gliding above the choking road traffic of the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, the Chinese-funded tramway system opened last year at a cost of $500 million. Beijing says investments like this will boost African economies, thereby alleviating poverty. It is also part of China's plan to become a dominant force on the global stage.
It was affirmed in Xi Jinping's speech. China is very much about, these days, rules-based global governance, multilateralism, globalization.
Visiting India this week, US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson accused China of not always playing by those rules.
One particular phrase:
China, while rising alongside India, has done so less responsibly, at times undermining the international rules-based order.
Recipient countries have welcomed Chinese investment, which sometimes comes with fewer conditions than Western aid, such as demands for democratic reform. But there could be a sting in the tail, warned Sang.
The real issue will come when some of those countries, particularly in Central Asia, have to pay back some of the loans that were accrued in the Belt and Road Initiative. And most of those countries will have problems paying back those loans.
For now, Chinese investment continues to expand. Development campaigners say Beijing's focus should be not only on ports and pipelines, but on tackling poverty. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a fashion event where full-figured women ruled the runway. We'll be right back.
say that this election must not stand
The sentence imposed is a maximum imprisonment of 5 years.
Vous l'avez dit, je crois que dans tout cela, l'objectif c'est quoi? C'est la paix mondiale.
C'est un sentiment de désolation, venir voir ces véhicules calcinés.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Models get ready to backstage for a fashion show in Douala, Cameroon that recently featured African collections, especially made for full-figured women. The plus-size modeling show was organized to help boost confidence among curvy women and hopes to change attitudes towards plus-size people, as well as make it easier for them to find a comfortable fit of clothes. Outfits on show were presented by designers from Cameroon and Ivory Coast, with collections inspired by vibrant African prints and styles like the bubu dress commonly worn in West Africa. Next up, Sony has unveiled a new robot dog called Aibo, a successor to its former popular robot dog with the same name that went defunct in 2005. The mechanical man's best friend is 180 millimeters wide, 293 millimeters tall. It runs for about 2 hours after a full charge of 3 hours. It has 2 cameras that use facial recognition to identify its owner and 22 actuator motors for movement. Owners can also sync Aibo with a smartphone app called My Aibo. The app allows them to play with the robot dog remotely. The robot costs about $1,700 plus a basic monthly network plan. Shipments will start in January 2018. And finally, an Israeli entrepreneur says his privately owned food tech startup has developed insect powder and oil extract as an alternative protein source that can potentially be a substitute for meat, poultry, and fish. With market demand growing for edible insects, the developers say fruit fly larvae have an edge over other edible insects in the market, such as grasshoppers, crickets, and mealworms, because they have no legs, wings, antennas, or eyes. The fruit flies have also short lifespan of 6 days, compared with 4 weeks of 4 other insects. They are easy to cultivate, cheap, and highly sustainable, and there's no greenhouse gas pollution. And that's what's trending today. Be sure to watch our Africa 54 show on our website at voaafrica.com. And for more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.